right, my fine and curious Herle Burly-ites, thank you for coming back here week after week. We have a great show for you today with a very special guest. But before we get to that, I want to give a plug to our Air Quotes Media swag shop. If you're like me, you have no truck with, nay, you crave the deeply meaningful emotional bonds forged by the public display of your favorite brands on t-shirts and beverage containers. So good news, if you go to airquotesmedia.com/shop-swag, you can choose from our first release of moderately clever Herle Burly t-shirts and coffee mugs. Cursive Politics stuff is there as well. Friends, these are high-quality products designed to make us a tiny amount of money while they warm your cold, cold political hearts. That's airquotesmedia.com/shop-swag. All right, let's get to it, Herle Burly-ites. We have Catherine McKenna on the pod today, and how much fun is that going to be? You all know Ms. McKenna was first elected to Parliament in 2015, served in Cabinet as Minister of Environment and Climate Change. In 2019, she became Minister of Infrastructure and Communities. In June of this year, she announced she would not seek re-election as a Member of Parliament in the riding of Ottawa Centre in order to focus on her family and climate change. Today, we're going to talk about that decision. We're going to talk about climate change. We're going to talk about the government writ large and talk about the future a little bit. Catherine, it's a great pleasure to have you on the Herle Burly today.
Well, I'm super excited, David, but you didn't tell me about the swag. So I didn't get any swag to come on the show. That's part of my contract, isn't it?
No, you know how it works. You get free swag now.
Oh, I get free swag. And I don't know how, well, I don't think I have to disclose it. You're going to give me like a coffee mug.
No, that's
a coffee mug is going to be awesome.
Although you are still a minister, are you not? I mean, this transition's going on long enough. You're a minister long enough to do something. You should make an announcement and see what happens.
I am not a minister. I stepped down. I told the Prime Minister I would stay on until the election. So I am no longer a minister. I am a free citizen, just, doing my thing.
Well, who's the Minister of Infrastructure?
It's Omar Alagabra. So there's an ability to designate, and so he's the designate. I mean, it's obviously caretaker convention. I'm sure everyone who follows this knows, or they don't and are so bored right now. So anyway, he's taken over. I went to the U.S. right after the election to have some conversations. I wasn't sure if I was even allowed to go if I wasn't doing it on my own for work, and I thought it was good to stay until then, but time to move on.
Okay. All right. Good to know. I'll drop the formal affectations from our conversation.
Yeah, you don't have to call me honorable. I'm from the Hammer. Like, we don't really do honorable unless it's like derisive.
Tell me a little bit about this Hammer business. Okay. So where do you come from? I assumed, given your posture on climate change, that you were born in either the glebe or the annex on a bicycle, and that you were raised vegan, organic vegan, and, come up in some kind of privileged background. Am I correct about that?
You really need to meet my Irish father, because he would think that. He would say, that's bollocks. That's bollocks. I don't know, that's a bad word, but it's all right if you're Irish and you say it. No, look, I grew up in the Hammer in Hamilton. Actually, like loads of fun people grew up in Hamilton, and had a pretty middle class existence. But one thing about Hamilton, you can't be fancy. And I think that's something that I hopefully brought with me to politics. I mean, you get kind of pigeonholed. I think it's so funny when people, think that, I'm some hippie. I mean, look, I do have Birks just because they're comfortable, but that I'm some hippie. I'm just actually a practical person. I'd like to think I can have a beer with anyone. I'm Irish, so that's like definitely a thing. And I think Hamilton, though, I mean, it was a great place to grow up. I actually went to a little French school on the other side of Hamilton. All four McKennas, we got on the bus, the blue bus, and we went by Gage Park to school there. And it was a little French-Canadian school because my mother was from Val-d'Or, Quebec, but her family was English. They just decided they loved Pierre Elliott Trudeau's vision. Language is very important if you're Irish, but very important to my parents. And so I went to not a very fancy school at all. And I think that's a good thing when you go into politics, because there's a tendency potentially to be fancy and to think that, you know it all. And often, and I think, anyone in cabinet or probably anyone in the House of Commons, like not even just in my party, would be like, anytime there's anything about Hamilton, I cheer. But I would also say often, this is really interesting, but no one in the Hammer will know what you're talking about. And it's a good reminder in politics to be about people, to not be fancy. And on climate, we have to be very careful because you can talk about things no one has any idea about. Like, people don't go around and say, hey, let's be net zero by 2050. Or what's your target? I'll tell you mine, right? Like, that's not how. That's
Show me your target.
That's not, some people do that, but the people who do that are already convinced about the need to act on climate change. We need to talk to real people. I don't know that we need to talk to conservative politicians because I saw that they're not entirely sure if they support carbon pricing anymore. I was like, wait, we had an election. I thought that was a thing in the election. But anyway, not to get distracted by politics. It was great growing up in Hamilton. Sheila Copps, she and I know each other well. We're pretty different, but I think
us too.
Yeah. Well, you gotta keep it real. You keep it real and you get shit done. Sorry, can I say that? You get stuff done. Get stuff done.
No. You're only allowed to say get shit done on the Herle Burly.
Okay. I'm like trying to reform myself after being in politics to stop swearing. But it's a bit hard.
So hey, what do you think of the election?
There was an election. It happened. Look, was it an amazing election? No. I thought I was just going to hang out in the glebe. I'm getting back to, I do live in the glebe now and, or just help out Yasser Naqvi in Ottawa Centre, but I kind of got scared. So I just was a one-man person on the road. And I ended up going to a lot of ridings in Ontario because I had great former staff members that were helping out swing ridings we either had to keep or we could win. A lot of women, a lot of amazing women. I didn't choose it because there were women. There's a lot of great women. And I went to help out because I wanted, morale was a bit low. I'll have to be honest at certain points. And I just couldn't stand, I don't like losing. That's just a thing. I'm a competitive swimmer, but I also don't like losing on climate. And while Aaron O'Toole had talked about a price on pollution, which apparently some conservative strategists have forgotten or want to forget, he also said he would backtrack on the target, and that's actually not a thing in the climate world. You can't go to the COP and talk about you're going backwards. So I just felt it was really important, and I'm a team player, so I went out. But the deal is, we went to doors and people weren't like, yay, amazing, an election. We love you guys. That wasn't really the feel. Now, I think it changed when people actually had to think about who do you want to be leader? What party do you want to have in power and what policies do you want? People don't actually talk like that. But I think people, at a certain point were like, more guns on the streets. That's actually not a thing I want. Climate change is real. I want serious action. But it was a pretty tough election. And look, I think, the Liberal Party in the end, we were able to get these seats where it was very, very close and kind of hold it to a draw. Now, I don't think that's nothing. And I think people do say this, and I know there's a big debate, was it an election about nothing? I don't think elections are ever really about nothing because in the end, people care. And for me, I really care about a lot of things, but I really care about climate. I think we get distracted. It's easy to pretend it's just a thing amongst many things. It is the thing. It is the thing for me, but it's also something I know Canadians are about. And we got, elected. And in elections in Canada, you win, if you get the most seats in this case, with a much more ambitious climate plan. So that was important to me. But look, I always say we have to be a bit humble as Liberals, and it's not always in the Liberal DNA. And I think that, it wasn't, I think, look, we won and winning is the thing, but I don't think it was, everyone was like, you're amazing. And I think that there are reflections to be made on that. And I think that's really, really important. because one, we owe it to Canadians, but also that'll affect how long you're in power and how you can, more importantly, what you can get done and what you do with that. So I don't know, there's probably a lot more to say. But I just think, look, it wasn't amazing. We won. It will make a difference on some important files like childcare and climate, amongst the most important. But I think maybe everyone should just not say this was a heroic victory, and just get to work and, just be a little more low key.
Right. Okay.
I'm sure. I know you have views on, David. You have views on.
I do, but I wanted to hear yours. Let's talk about climate. Let's first of all, COP26 is coming up. Right?
Yep.
What does COP stand for?
Conference of the Parties. This is, you know what? I actually hate acronyms, and I was so embarrassed when the Prime Minister asked me to be the first Minister of Environment and Climate Change, and then he's like, "And you're going to COP21 in like a few days." I was like, damn it, I don't even know what that means. I mean, I knew that there was this meeting, but I kind of thought my climate friends, like the ones that are the hippie environment, they're not all hippies, but like environmentalists, they were like taking care of that thing. And so I had to go ask my department. I said, like, no dumb questions, right? And they're like, okay, well, maybe there are. But they told me Conference of the Parties. And I was like, amazing. Let's stop use acronyms, please, for the love of God, for my own sake.
Well, that doesn't even mean much more than COP to me, though. Conference of the Parties.
I know. It's also, I know. You know what? This is one of the biggest problems on climate is the language that is like, it's like you're the cool kids, although you're kind of not that cool necessarily in this world, but you're talking some lingo that people don't get. What is it? It's a annual meeting where you bring, loads of people go. Like now it's like people come from all over, all walks of life. And that's probably a good thing. But essentially it's where countries, parties to now the Paris Agreement, which we were able to get in COP21 in 2015, where they come together and they negotiate. And the real key thing, like you can talk about all the different pieces they're negotiating, but the key thing, and once again, this is a bit lingo-ish, but you need to raise ambition. What does that mean? Every country needs to do more. So that's what is going to be the test of this COP. Like, where are countries in doing more? Because you always have to ratchet it up and do more. And sometimes we get criticized, as a liberal government, like, you haven't solved climate change. Like, all your emissions aren't all going down. The purpose of the Paris Agreement, every country has come to the table saying we all need to be part of the solution. So that was hugely important, where everyone has to do the heavy lifting. But you have to ratchet it up because you can't just change everything overnight. And so that's what we've been focusing on. Canada is coming with a new target. It's a very ambitious one, reducing emissions by 40 to 45%. And we also, one of the big things this climate conference is going to be assistance to developing countries. And developing countries, let's just be clear, have done the least to cause climate change and often are suffering the worst impacts, although we all are. And so the good news is Canada has doubled its climate assistance and is now, Jonathan Wilkinson, current minister, is co-leading a working group with Germany on making sure there is $100 billion of government money allocated to help developing countries raise ambitions, but also adapt to climate change. So if none of that made any sense, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make it more normal, but hopefully that's kind of explains what the heck happens there.
So I've been talking about the whole use it or lose it thing the last couple of weeks, focusing on the idea of losing something when you don't use it. But today I want to flip it on its head. I want to explore a really important example of the benefits of using something. Our presenting sponsor, TELUS, is a technology leader with a social purpose. TELUS invests in spectrum to digitally connect rural Canada. Spectrum is the radio waves that make your cell phone work. The federal government licenses spectrum to companies who are expected to use it to actually provide service. TELUS is doing exactly that, providing service to places like Caramios in BC's mountainous Okanagan Valley. Just think how critical cell phone connectivity has been to first responders in the region these last 19 months of pandemic and wildfires. So you'd think that would be the norm, right? heightened awareness of just how important it is to use the spectrum to connect rural Canadians during the pandemic. But no, way too many rural communities have their spectrum controlled by regional carriers who still choose to squat on it and then resell it for millions in profit, then use it to improve people's connectivity. I want to be clear, regional does not mean small. These are multi-billion-dollar regional companies who get billions of dollars in government spectrum subsidies. And the fact is, they deploy less than 20% of the rural spectrum they hold. It's egregious. TELUS, on the other hand, has the strongest track record of deploying their rural spectrum. Almost 2/3 of it is put to use to do exactly what it is supposed to do, connect Canadians. Like I said, a technology leader with a social purpose. Go to telus.com/connectingcanada to learn more. So I read an interview with you, an exit interview with you, where you kind of implied that you felt that everything that Canada needed to do on the climate change front had already been done. And now what was needed was that we needed to get other places in the world happening. And so that's why you were going off to work on climate change outside of government, because the basic government framework was already in place here. Is that true?
Well, I'm going to be more precise because it may have sounded like this, but I'm quite careful with the way I choose my words. What I was saying is a couple things. One, like, don't think you're the hero of every story. So, I mean, lots of people can be a Minister of Environment and Climate Change. I think I worked really hard with the Prime Minister, with the entire team, with provinces, with businesses, with Indigenous peoples to get a climate plan. We've increased ambition to the climate plan. We have a key pillar of that, which is a price on pollution that is steadily rising, which, by the way, was flipping hard. Let's just be clear. And many countries, I don't know, will the US get there? I hope so. We committed to phasing out coal. We're tackling methane emissions, and now we've said we will reduce them by 75%, which is huge because methane is a huge driver of emission reductions. We need to, and I will be clear here, we haven't done all the work, no. And we're going to have to wrestle with the transition, the energy transition. And that does mean coal, but we've already done coal phase out. We got to figure out now how we're going to get our, enough clean energy. But that also means oil and gas. And that was in the platform that oil and gas needs to be part of this. And this is really important to me because I think people need to understand this. Like, climate change is math. Like, reducing emissions, you either go up, you go down, and everyone has to be part of it. And so you often hear from Jason Kenney, the oil and gas sector, we're reducing our emissions intensity. Okay, well, I mean, that sounds like something. The reality is that emissions from the oil and gas sector are projected to go up like this. Whether they will because of the international market, maybe not. But they have to be part of the solution. So there is some wrestling with that. That was part of the platform. Every 5 years, they have to show how they're reducing emissions. They have to be part of the plan to get to net zero because we could retrofit every house, building, plant a bazillion, trillion trees. It won't make a difference. So there is work to be done. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying Canada has done everything. I'm saying we've got a plan. We know what we need to do. People have to grind away. It's super not sexy. I think Adam Radwanski had a great piece in the Globe and Mail saying, it's not just about the environment, minister. It's not just about two awesome women who I want to give a shout out to because often we don't hear about women kicking it on climate behind the scenes. Sarah Goodman, who is at PMO every day. Sarah Goodman wakes up and tries to get everyone in PMO land and across government to focus on climate. And that's not what everyone always wakes up every day to do. Jennifer McIntyre, who's an amazing public servant. She was my climate ambassador, is now the head of the unit at PCO, which was revolutionary. PCO, the Privy Council office, has a huge coordinating role, but we have to figure this out across government. Okay, so that's my piece. That's Canada. I'm not saying it all done. I'm saying Catherine McKenna has to do other things, other people who can do it and grind away. Very boring sometimes, but just head down. The reality is we are very far. So we saw this through a number of reports. I just saw another report. The International Energy Agency just showed the huge gap we have, even after people have been more ambitious post-Paris, going into Glasgow, got a huge gap. And I'm a practical person. So this gets back to it's math. So what is the math we need to do? Well, a very obvious thing is we need everyone to get off coal. That's what Canada is doing. We need every country to get off coal. China made a very important commitment. They said they're no longer going to fund coal internationally. Obviously, in developing countries, that's a hugely important.
Come on, they're still opening coal plants, right?
Right. But I mean, like, look, coal is a huge issue right now. You can write, I just was reading the Globe and Mail for the business section. I do read other papers. National Post still has work to do. They did get the lowest mark, just so everyone knows, on actually climate accuracy in the Globe. Like, that's really hard to do, probably. But the Globe, they made the point, and these articles make the point that, we got a problem. Like, if you're going to do a transition, it's not enough to say, okay, we're going to get off coal. You better figure out what's going to replace the coal. And then we want to electrify everything. So you're going to have more demand for clean electricity. So, but the reality is, what do I want to do? I want to scale climate and nature solutions to get gigaton reductions. I'm done with pledges. People are doing this. Who cares? It's just math. And so I lived in Indonesia for 3 years, so Indonesia needs to get off coal. But you can't just say magic wand, get off coal. I think you got to grind away. You got to go talk to them, these different countries, look at the energy mix. What are the opportunities? Money is a thing. Decommissioning coal costs money. We saw that in Ontario. It was the largest reduction in emissions. You got to do that. Just transition. You got to think about workers. Politicians won't do things if everyone's going to lose jobs. You cannot do it. It is impossible. And so that's a piece. Nature, there's some huge nature plays. Canada committed to protect 30% of nature by 2030. We've done some huge deals, in particular with Indigenous peoples, and we need to scale that. And so I've been approached, I've been talking to the big nature organizations about how I can support, what are the lessons learned, how I can support that. So I'm just a practical person, and I just care about climate change. I care about my kids. Like I said, I'm leaving for my kids and I'm leaving for climate change, but those are the same thing.
Okay, let me pull at some practical strings that you mentioned.
Okay.
Right? Just things that occur to me as a layperson or that I've encountered. So first of all, you mentioned that Joe Biden doesn't have a carbon tax as part of his climate change plan. The United States will still be feted as heroes at COP for not being Trump and for having a climate change action plan, but they don't have a carbon tax, and they never will have a carbon tax in the United States. So why is it essential for us to have one if they don't have to have one? They can have an acceptable global climate change plan without a carbon tax. Why can't we?
Well, okay, there's always a lot to unpack. But one, I don't know if they'll be feted at COP. That remains to be seen. Because I think there's some reluctance to, the U.S. has to show the goods. And that is, it's not going to be a price on pollution in the U.S. Right now. Although, let's be clear, that California has a carbon market, right? That is a huge deal.
At the state level, yeah. Ontario was part of it with the cap and trade system. Ontario and Quebec were part of it.
Yeah, that was kind of down that they pulled out. Terrible for industry. Yeah. And I don't know. I did talk to the environment minister in Ontario. I was like, you know what? The Supreme Court made a decision. You could go to COP and announce what you're doing on pricing and make it consistent. Free advice. So look, I think the states have actually made a huge difference. And I don't think we can forget this. I lived the Trump era, every day was annoying, but I focused a lot on states and cities and businesses in the US, and they've done a lot of heavy lifting. If you look at emissions in the US, they have gone down, and I think they will. And I'm actually talked to folks that are former Obama folks about a price on pollution. I do think look, we all have to get to that. The big challenge is not that Biden doesn't want it. It's not like Obama didn't want it, and maybe they'll try.
I don't think Joe Manchin will vote for it.
Well, this is the
problem. I don't think Joe Manchin will vote for it.
I know. Right? It's one guy. That's it. Although, you kind of want Republicans, and I've actually worked with Republicans. There's a cross-party climate caucus, which I would hope we would convene here. Mike Chong can lead it on the conservative side.
He'd be the only member.
No, Ed Fast. I think Ed Fast. He might not show, but Ed, look.
They'll have to send Bosenkool as a representative.
Actually, Aaron O'Toole. I don't know. Maybe he's in a minority. Your friend Jenny Byrne. Maybe she'll come to the party. Look, it's look. I think you need to get to a price on pollution across the board, but you can also link markets. China has markets, so you could link China, California, Quebec, and there's other Europe. But that's not the only piece of pricing. It is an important piece because, and people don't really understand pricing in a way. And I did put this out on Twitter. I don't actually care why people do good things. I just want to do them. But the reason you put pricing is you can reduce the amount of money you spend. Like there's an incentive to save money by doing, the right thing. And so that's actually like good. We want that. And at a certain point, we've already said by 2035, all new vehicles be electric.
But
so you won't even have to
wait a
pay
second
for
though.
gas.
What's the roadmap for people? How is an ordinary person supposed to process that? Like say I'm buying a car. What am I supposed to buy? How do I even know? Like the whole thing doesn't seem real to me, Catherine. We have to, in an extremely short period of time, get all the vehicles on the road electric, get all the buildings retrofitted, get manufacturing reconfigured, get farming reconfigured, and build a clean grid that can supply all of the previous fossil fuel energy through electricity. This has to happen in a couple of decades. I can't even imagine it. I can't imagine it.
Well, so that's a problem because I think we do need to imagine it, but everyone doesn't have to imagine every piece. It is very complicated. Like I realize this is environment minister. I also realize I have limited tools. So let's just take one little piece, like things that make me kind of irritated. You go to buy a car, right? Like no one sort of says, hey, guess what? If you have an electric vehicle, you're going to save this much money on gas over the lifetime of your vehicle. And basically there are no maintenance costs. Like it's just so like no one tells you that. And we created an incentive. So you will get a $5,000, like the Liberal government created a $5,000 incentive. Many provinces have it, but Doug Ford, first thing he did, got rid of the incentive. Like this is the problem about lurching on policy. It actually is a real problem, but you also need business. Obviously businesses need to be part of it. If people like had the incentives to actually sell you an electric vehicle, or if Canadians I think we need to manufacture the vehicles themselves here. I mean, parts, yes. But the whole, we should try to take markets over because then Canadians will be like, great jobs. And you've seen this actually. To be fair, I know Ford, Chrysler.
Tesla just moved to Texas, which is the opposite of Canada.
Right. But actually, interestingly, it's always, stories are always more complicated. I went to Texas when Trump got elected. I went to Houston because the mayor of Houston is a climate champion. He was the head of the climate mayors. So it was a little bit like, ha, 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 people are still doing things, but it was also intended, you never know if anyone sees anything you do. I mean, I put it on social media, but the mayor explained that, of course, Texas is still about oil and gas in Houston, but it's also focused on climate change and this transition. And so I'm doing an event, I'm doing a number of events, but one is about, with businesses about ESG. And I don't think I'm breaking anybody's confidence by saying this, but we got into the conversation about balance. I hate the conversation.
ESG stands for?
Well, it's environmental, social, and governance. So it's like a new way of looking at what should business value. And so it's good, obviously hugely positive. A lot of ways that businesses are looking at investments are focused on ESG. You have people, I know once again, acronyms are terrible because they don't really tell a story. But I said to them, we got to get out of balance, guys. The planet's not in balance. The science is the science. What we got to get into is the space we can do this. And if there's anything I can do to get people motivated based on COVID, because I think COVID's an amazing example of a global challenge where you have to look at the science, you have to listen to the scientists, everyone, you have to spend significant amounts of money to save money. Because if you're in the pandemic forever, we're in constant lockdowns, no one's, we've got supply issues, got all these problems. And you need the whole world to be working together. And guess what? People thought we would never get a vaccine. Do you remember at the beginning? They're like, maybe we don't generally get vaccines for this kind of thing. Maybe it'll take a decade. It was so doom and gloom. And then, you know what? Everyone just put their head down. And they just said, we have a clear goal, all going to go for it. And by the way, kudos to people like Anina and Nan, Patty Haidu, and folks that worked super hard to get us the vaccine here. But look, we did it. And I just want everyone
You put both of them in the same category?
Look, I think they both worked really hard. And hard things are hard in life, right? Like people are going to.
Sorry, I'm just being a jerk. I'm just being
but I actually think that, you know what? I lived where people like question every single decision you make, and you're like, whoa, it's like you're in the front lines. Every single question and question period from the Conservatives was about carbon pricing. It was me, or as Sean Fraser, I pointed out, on Fridays, it was Sean Fraser. And like, it was Polyev, like every day. And like, everyone's trying to trip you up, every decision you make. And I can't even imagine in COVID, the pressures. And obviously you don't control everything. And sometimes you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say things that are going to be misinterpreted. And I don't know, easy to sit in the cheap seats, I'll just say, and you know, say, why didn't you do this or this? You could have done better. Like, just that's my 2 cents on that. Try the job. Like, I mean, it's amazing. Right. We're extremely privileged, but it's hard. But anyway, I just think, so you're going back to your question. Is this real? How do we make it real? I don't think every Canadian needs to know every aspect of the climate plan. Number one, they need to believe climate change is real. So we need the National Post and all the, you know, trolls to stop saying like, you know, the planet is always warming and like, we're not. But I think generally Canadians believe in that. Two, we need to have tangible things that people can do because people need to actually understand. So we need to have retrofit programs that are easy and that people actually say, oh, if I actually reduce emissions, I don't care as much about that. I care about saving money or whatever it is. I want to do this thing. We need to have incentives. Eventually, the price of electric vehicles will go down, but not fast enough. And by the way,
couldn't we have had this conversation 15 years ago?
I think we did, actually, David. Like, actually, Liberals were on it. I think that there were a lot of attempts. Paul Martin certainly was on it. We certainly had Stéphane Dion. His dog was even called Kyoto, which is really weird. I have my dog here. My dog's called Skokie. After Skokie Lodge in Alberta. I mean, maybe that's kind of nature, but... I'll call it Cop. My next dog will be Cop, and everyone will be like, "You should come after the police." But look, we tried. But this is, I think, though, there's more of a consensus because look, we got through 2019 election, which is also super not pretty, by the way, and people overwhelmingly supported parties that supported a price on pollution. Like, I think that is revolutionary. In 2015, I knew I had to get it done. But I knew it was going to be bloody.
But you know, there's no causal relationship there, right? Like you're saying,
Canadians, but
in spite of it,
right? But
in spite of it, then.
No, I actually don't think that's true. I think that Canadians, progressives, like, look, we can't appeal to everyone. The progressives said you need to take ambitious climate action. Like in 2019, I think they were still trying to make up our mind. Have we taken enough ambitious action because we're not seeing the reductions immediately? But we didn't even talk in this election a lot about. We got a seriously increasing carbon price. Now, you did raise another issue that we won't.
I think if the Conservatives had talked about it, the Liberals would have lost the election.
Wrong. We'll have to arm wrestle, but I don't think that's right. I went to doors and progressives wanted more action on climate change. I think
they wanted the price of a liter of gas to go up 40 cents.
Okay, but that's bullshit. By the way, like the people try to say this every time, like the price of gas goes up, it's related to pricing. It's like literally not. I can go give you tons of studies showing that. But I think that.
No, but come on, we're increasing the carbon price to $170. That's going to have a 40-cent a liter impact on the price of gas, right?
By the way, by that time, there's going to be a huge supply of electric vehicles that are going to be a lot less expensive. There's going to be a secondary market for used vehicles.
I'm not fighting your policy, just the political implications of the policy.
I'm just saying a lot of people told me don't do a price on pollution in 2015. And I was like, oh, sorry, I'm going to have a climate plan and it's got to be real. And our emissions have to go down. And by the way, we wasted decades and we fooled around. And so too bad. I don't know. Like, look, hard things are hard. I think Jean Chrétien told me, he gave me the best advice. It was kind of a funny time because we were having lunch.
I'm sure that's true.
But we were having lunch and he was talking probably about how we kind of sucked on something a little bit. Like, he was like, you weren't amazing. He just said, les Canadiens sont raisonnables. Soyez raisonnables, which was like, could you please be reasonable? Because Canadians are reasonable. So it wasn't like you're reasonable. And I think it was like, to our government, please be more reasonable. But I always think about that. Like whether it's a price on pollution or these hard files that would come on my desk, approving projects or whatever, like be reasonable and talk to Canadians like real people. That doesn't mean you go into the minutia of carbon pricing because everyone's going to fall asleep and not know what you're talking about. You talk about climate change. You talk about how we have to figure out how we're going to reduce emissions, how this is something, you can try to get into it. You talk about how much money you're going to get back. More people are going to be better off. But I think we get so caught up in politics and thinking people are stupid. You know what? People aren't stupid. And this isn't just a marketing exercise every single day. It's actually doing real things for real people and actually having faith. And I actually have faith in Canadians on climate. I see a huge sea shift where, look, if you're going to win Quebec, BC, and progressives in Ontario, you better be serious about climate. And I think you can say, oh, well, if the Conservatives are hit hard, I think they tried that. Remember, we actually had every premier that was Conservative premiers against it. We had stickers on pumps. Now the stickers fell off. It was kind of hilarious. I have one of those stickers, by the way. We had Ford ministers. They're like taking pictures of themselves, like putting gas in their car, like whatever. That didn't work. Like people saw it for the gimmicks they were, and people know we are seeing the impacts of climate change across the country, David. Like we had. Like, look what happened.
No, and I know that they are, but I don't know that people still make the connection between what they pay in a carbon price and fighting right, climate.
But that's only
but we're not going to solve this.
We're not going to solve it. We're not like we could really go on this, and everyone's going to be like, "Can I turn this podcast up as fast as possible?" Okay.
So our sponsor, CN, believes the right way to run a railroad is for the long term. Yes, CN is a publicly held company. And of course, it must be competitive. It has an obligation to its employees and its shareholders to turn a healthy profit, pay dividends, and generate value, which it has done. Since January 2018, CN's share price has grown 36%. That's about 12% a year. At the same time, the company has invested heavily in technology, safety, and infrastructure, all crucial factors in building the railway of the future and continuing to move cargo on time in a competitive market. CN believes that is the way to grow. Others, though, have a different view. One of CN's shareholders is TCI, a British hedge fund. It recently acquired 5% of CN stock and is now trying to take effective control of the company. In pursuit of that goal, TCI has made misleading public statements about CN's key financial indicators and is pushing to install certain people into the railway's most senior offices. TCI's short-term objective is obvious. It wants to increase the price of the CN shares it holds. It's not hard to imagine how it would accomplish that, starting with slashing costs. It is, after all, a hedge fund. But make no mistake, that would have medium and long-term consequences for CN's customers, employees, and other stakeholders. Never mind the company's ability to stay on the cutting edge of railroading. In any case, CN has a couple of things to say. First, the railway already has a strategic value creation plan underway. I've talked about it here in the past couple of weeks. It's a sensible, thoughtful, balanced plan meant to make the railway even more competitive, ensuring a good outcome for all of its stakeholders. Second, it should be noted that while the British hedge fund is indeed a significant CN shareholder, it is also the single biggest shareholder of Canadian Pacific, CN's main competitor. CN wants its thousands of other shareholders to reflect on that. The company has called a special shareholder meeting next March to deal with the issues raised by TCI. It will have more to say on this in the months ahead. Oh, and one other thing. TCI has acknowledged, in writing, that CN's is the best railway network in North America. That's a direct quote. It's also absolutely accurate, and CN intends to keep it that way. CN didn't become the company and the railway it is by thinking short term, and it's not going to start now. So let's get our politicos back. I want to ask you some questions about how this government works now that you're out of it.
Well, I'm out of it.
Look at your face.
So I'm like, I don't know. I'm out of it. I don't know. No one tells me.
Well, let's just start with this.
What do you mean?
How does it work? Does the cabinet sit around and deliberate on big issues and come to a consensus, and then that's how the government moves forward? Or are decisions made bilaterally elsewhere and presented to cabinet for ratification? What does it mean to be a minister in this government?
It means you get like these huge memorandums to cabinet, and like you read and read and read, and then you try to make as many to like understand all of this and make decisions. Look, I think being a minister is a really serious thing, and I could give you examples. Obviously, I can't talk about what happens in cabinet and in particular discussions, but I'll say at the highest level, take something like medical assistance in dying. And this is also why diverse cabinets matter. Like, we actually do have a discussion. Like, people go around, and I think everyone, like, well, I'll come to this later, but when I left, like, people maybe took the wrong conclusions, or like, I don't think anyone, like, when I kind of said, like in politics, you got to be a team player or whatever, like, I don't think anyone thought I didn't speak up. It's just every day you don't have to go shout it outside, in the public. Like, you got to get things done. And cabinet has really serious issues. So back to medical assistance in dying. I mean, we had someone in cabinet who was a quadriplegic. We had Carla Coulter, who's actually a great friend and is a Paralympian and amazing, who is legally blind. We have, people, that through their faith, there are real challenges with medical assistance in dying. We had someone who had breast cancer. Like, you just had a diversity of views, and the level of discussion you had reflected that. Now, is that the case on every file? Maybe not, because there's a volume, and some things are obviously way more important than others. Does that mean that the center, and by the center, obviously the prime minister, the prime minister's office, don't have views? No, I mean, of course they do. But I think largely we were able to have informed discussions. And like, look, I always gave my piece. Like, sometimes people don't love it, but I just felt like we said it was government by cabinet, and I owed it to give my perspective. But that doesn't mean you win every fight. Like, and it's not always fights. Fights is probably a wrong way. I'm kind of a fighter because I'm Irish, but it's like, you don't always win. But I think, you had a chance to make your piece. And sometimes would you be a little bit irritated that, you felt you had the better argument, or this was a bad route to go and politically dangerous or whatever, or you worried about caucus? You got to think about caucus. Like, cabinet isn't the most important thing all the time. Like, caucus is a very important tool. Tool isn't the right thing. I mean, it's a group of people who are elected across the country. Luckily, we're Liberals, and you are elected, including this election is better. Like, we're more representative across the country, and you have to listen to them. Do I think sometimes that, we have to think about that, that maybe we have to think about that a bit more? I mean, I think the reflections on governments after, governments have been in power for a long time, that, it's maybe easier to not do that, or you might think how people think. But I think generally I felt empowered as a cabinet minister. I certainly said my piece. I didn't always get what I wanted. I would lobby ministers. Sometimes I would go get caucus and get them. I mean, this is the reality. I don't know. I get things done. I'm just like kind of wily. Like, if you want to get like a price on pollution, I had to get folks to say every dollar had to go back in a transparent way. Not everyone thought that. Some people thought if only we were liberal and put it in things, different pots of things. And I was like, sorry, dudes, cannot sell that. I need an amount so I can tell every Ontarian this is when you get back. And so caucus was amazing. They were like, yeah, I can't go to my constituents. Like, they'll be like bonkers. They're like, how much am I paying? And you're like, I don't know. That's not an answer. So, but I think though, like, it's easy to be cynical. I think that people worked really hard, and we have public servants. I mean, one thing I would say, and I was told the clerk this and other people, like, I'm not entirely sure having 1 million memorandums to cabinet that are like super big is a way that a board, we're essentially the board running a country. So yes, it's more complex, and people push back. They're like, it's so different. I don't know, it's so different. We're making really tough decisions. I don't think we need this volume of information. Sometimes I think it's written for other people, not ministers. But I think it's like, look, it was a huge honor, but it's also, it's a lot of work. And I think, you also have to realize you're a team. And I think team is underrated in politics. Like, and I don't mean that, because I do feel like people jump on me when I say team, or like, I feel like I can now say whatever I want. Yeah, I'm not in politics. I can say whatever I want. And did I moderate it sometimes? I don't think everyone was like, McKenna didn't generally say what she wanted. Or like, I think I did. I just sometimes didn't have to say everything, and I didn't have to say everything publicly. I don't think that's how you get things done. I'm outcomes based, impact outcomes. And you're not the hero. As I say, it's not about you. I mean, you probably, if you're
it's reported.
If you're a politician, you probably think it's about you all the time, but you got to try to not think it's about you all the time, and you're not the hero of every single story. And I think that's been a problem sometimes. When you see problems in cabinet, sometimes it's folks thinking it's more about them than it is about Canadians.
It's reported that it's difficult to get time with the Prime Minister. How does that affect cabinet working?
Well, look, he's busy, obviously. And I think that, there were some reflections on that to make him more available. And he certainly, had, reached out to me when there was incidents more recently. I do think that is important. I think that it's not that every day, and Chrétien said this famously, like, if I don't contact you, it's because you're not bugging me. Like, you're doing your job. So I think there is something to that. But
if you wanted to see Chrétien, you could that day.
Right. And I think that is something that is important, because I think you need a team, and your team is going to sometimes tell you things you don't want to hear. Right. Like, probably. But that's okay. You don't have to always take your advice, especially if you're Prime Minister. I mean, you're Prime Minister. But I think it is important. Now, I mean, I don't know how it works, right? Like, I do think, though, as a general principle, is it good? I don't know if you have to see them that day necessarily, depending what the issue is. But I do think being available, not just to ministers, though. Like, I think it's caucus. Like, we sometimes forget. Like, I think being a caucus member, it can be very hard. And I think they play a really important role. Like, they get things on the ground that you can't necessarily get. And if you're in cabinet, you try not to be disconnected. I tried really hard. Like, I really felt like it was MP for Ottawa Centre, but even Ottawa Centre, people in cabinet or wherever, they talk about the bubble. Don't, get out of the bubble. I was like, I am the bubble of the bubble. Those are my people you're talking about. Be nice to them. Although I do think that, isn't it like 100 meters outside of Parliament Hill, people don't care. And that is kind of true. Like, look, I go knock on doors. A lot of people have no idea. They don't care. They don't care what we're talking about. But look, I think that is an important point. Look, and as I say, like, I think there's always reflections that you can make. Like, I think all of us can figure out, how do you, be better at your job? And sometimes you get so busy with your job that you forget that maybe you're in habits and maybe there are other ways of doing things. There you go. That's like a non-answer.
There you go. You suffered a tremendous amount of sexist and misogynist bullshit when you were minister, particularly of the environment. And for 3 years, that overlapped with what I was watching happen to Kathleen Wynne as she was Premier of Ontario. And the combination of what was being said about the two of you was pretty, disheartening, to say the least. So we could talk about that kind of discourse, but why does political criticism take that form for women?
Because misogyny is real. By the way, it's not just women in politics. I mean, it's women journalists. I've never seen the attacks on women journalists. Also, if you're a minority or it's a double whammy if you're a woman and a minority. But look, this is the new era. Like, social media has enabled this. Like, in a different look, it's always existed. But I mean, if you're in your basement, you can go outside and then everyone's going to be like, oh God, just ignore that person. Where now you're in your basement and you're like, you go to your friends and guess what? Facebook's going to promote your hatred against Catherine to other people who hate Catherine. So that is why I speak out against this, because social media companies have a huge responsibility to play. They make a lot of money, including off of people like me, right? If you have a following, like, they're making money. So I think that I think it's just much more rampant. I think it's existed, but a few people doesn't add up to much before social media. A few people can now sound like it's a huge orchestra of people. It can sound very loud. And I always tried to keep that in mind, that it wasn't as many people. It could feel like a lot. I would call it out. I mean, I didn't call it out for such a long time. And that's actually a lesson. I'm writing a book, by the way, not a tell-all. No, I mean, a tell-all like Catherine McKenna, some things that I want to tell people, but it's called Run Like a Girl. And it's really like lessons about, I don't know if it's just about like running in politics. It's just about being a woman and being yourself, or a girl. Like, how do you go and just be yourself. But some things like happen in politics where people kind of don't want you to be yourself. So they, people said, don't speak out against these folks. Like my good friends that would call me Climate Barbie, or people that they were saying things that were inflammatory or derogatory or quite frankly abusive and hateful and actually dangerous. Because they felt that I would be pigeonholed, like as a woman, maybe I'd be seen as shrill, or maybe to attract more attention. And kind of the best thing I ever did in an empowering way, but also kind of as a wake-up call, because I think Canadians didn't really like it at all, was the first time I did it was Jerry Ritz. When he decided it'd be great if he did a tweet. While I was literally in New York negotiating climate with leaders and ministers.
He's a clever guy. He's the death by 1,000 cold cuts guy during the listeria crisis.
Right. Well,
right. He's a clever man.
I think he paid a serious price for what he did to me. And I'm not like a vindictive person, but I was like, okay, this is done. Because it was a long day. I get back to my crappy hotel and sitting in the lobby. And I saw my Twitter feed had exploded. And I was like, what's going on? And it was because he'd called me like Climate Barbie. I can't even remember the tweet. And so I said to my team, sorry, over. And like, I do a lot of my own tweets. Well, I do them all now. But before I did a lot of them, you could always tell the difference, the Catherine McKenna tweets and the team tweets. And luckily I kind of got away with it, because I think even though I pushed the envelope, and probably people in the, Prime Minister's office might have been like, I don't know that I like that. But they kind of knew that whatever was kind of okay. But I just said, dudes, I'm doing it. I don't care. I'm writing it. I'm pressing send. And I think they looked at me and they knew there was just nothing you can do. And it's one of those moments with your minister, you're like, I really don't want her to do it, but she is going to do it and she's going to own it. And I just wrote a tweet. Like, it took me like 2 minutes. I was just like, would you use that kind of language for your sister, your girlfriend, your mother? Don't do it. Don't do it on me. I can't even remember what I wrote, but
you're such a strong, accomplished person. You're such a strong, accomplished person. Why does it get to you?
So I will just say there was an outpouring in Canadians. They were like, you know what? It wasn't about me. It was just about like, it's not okay. And people said it wasn't okay. And then I had people, parents, dads who would be like, it's good. Yeah. But why did it get to me? Because you know what? It just is intended to belittle you. It's intended to discredit you. It's intended to make you look like an idiot that you know what you're talking about. And that's bad, because I don't run as a woman. Like, I'm writing a book, Run Like a Girl. So it's kind of funny. But I don't like every day I don't wake up and say, I am a woman. I'm going to do womanly things. What I woke up every day is like, I'm going to tackle climate change. Like, we're going to do things. And then they just took gender. Like, I didn't know there's like this circle of hell. It's like misogyny and climate. And they like are kind of, and probably anti-vaxxers. Like, I could add on to the circles. Like, and I was just like, oh, this is extremely weird that people don't like me because I'm a woman, and they don't like me because I care about climate change. And like, look, lots of people get worse, like Greta. Greta is like a kid getting this crap. So it bugs me that way. Also, I mean, it's kind of funny. I'll show you. Can I pull something out?
Yeah, hold on. Props. We love them.
Look at my prop sent to me.
Jesus.
Oh, I got lots of these. Like, they'd be like, haha, it's so funny. Climate Barbie, here's your Barbie. And I sent some of them to like the Christmas, toy drives. But it was kind of funny because I never played with Barbies as a girl. I don't care if you played with Barbies, but I never did. So it was like even weirder. And like, yes, I have blonde hair, but whatever. Like, so yeah, I mean, it was annoying. And like, I tried not to let it get to me. It just pissed me off because it was used, including honestly, and this is like, I know people don't like hearing this, but it was used by conservative politicians, even premiers. Like, I really felt like there was this way that they were trying to demean me that had to do with my gender. And I have never been someone who I'm a woman.
Is there anything, I'm sorry, Catherine, I got to stop you. Is there anything that Scott Moe, Jason Kenney, or Doug Ford could possibly say that you would feel diminished by? Look at those three jokers.
They were the resistance. That was the best meme ever. Yeah. Like we actually all had a lot of fun in that. Look, I mean, like, I guess you could say you don't care, but they have power, right? And power is how you get shit done. And so it irritated me. I remember like Scott Moe flipping came to a COP with me. We were in Morocco. We were in the COP in Morocco. I was like, I will sell your lentils, because he was having a lentil issue with Morocco. I think it was a lentil issue. And then I was like, and you want to do carbon capture and storage with Boundary Dam. Like the economics aren't really working, but let's figure out a way to do this. And by the way, you can do a price with pollution. And I'd done the math, and Ralph Goodall was great. We said, you can get rid of your PST, your provincial sales tax. Like, we've done all this work. We thought we were so smart. And I thought he was a reasonable person. I thought he would go on to be premier and be like, yeah, you know what? Climate change is real. And we got to be part of the solution. And we're going to like do some things, but we're going to do it kind of our way. No, not at all. And plus, how he's hammering to his base, like about, like, I was like, dude, be better. Like, I feel like someone said, no, McKenna. I kind of feel like that now and it's not like, but actually, to be honest, Doug Ford and I have worked together because I'm also a practical person. So look, we did massive transit deal. And that was really big deal. It was hard. It was extremely, extremely hard. So you can still do things that matter to people, and it's not about you. And, you know, when I left environment, I kind of felt that was a good thing, because it became too personal about me and these people. And I was like, okay, they're like too much drama, too much. I'm like, I actually don't like drama. I feel like drama likes me sometimes. Like, you know, people write these things in my office. The whole country comes to my office. I'm like, great. So I have to go talk to people about this. Like, I was walking my kid to school, my son, my poor son. I didn't even tell him. He was like 10 years old, and he came home. He already knew. I didn't want to talk to him because I don't even like that word, like saying that word or anyone knowing that word or any of this. And so much drama. So like, yeah, I mean, look, now I sound like I'm scarred by this. I'm not scarred, because I'm someone who just realized that was also a strength, because these guys are, not these guys, okay, now I'm being like, whatever. People who would attack me, conservative politicians, were kind of doofuses. And so they were a good foil for progressives who cared about climate. But, you know, I don't know, like, we all just be better. Like, it's just a thing. It's just the science. Everyone just like work on the science and get solutions.
Yeah. Men are very
now I'm like
these days.
doing this podcast. Now I'm like, okay, unleash.
Oh, no, we haven't started yet.
I'd have a staffer. They'd be like, okay, time's up. Time's up.
They really should do that. I've got two more questions for you, and they're very political, and only you can answer them for me. And now a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Since Confederation, owning a home has been part of the Canadian dream. For most people, that dream is much more than just a monthly mortgage payment. A home is where we create our fondest memories and where we can truly be ourselves. For too many, especially young adults, that reality is out of reach, and it's getting worse. The good news is our original sponsor, the Ontario Real Estate Association, or RIA for short, has a plan to save the Canadian dream of home ownership. It includes lowering costs for first-time buyers, ending money laundering in the real estate market, and cutting years of red tape that is standing in the way of more affordable homes for families. The OREA plan will lay the foundation for a future where all people can find a place to call home. When we support the dreams of all of us who want to own a home, we're building healthier families, stronger communities, and a safer, more secure future for all. Read their plan at orea.com/affordable homes. And we're back. And I've been dying to ask this question of somebody that could conceivably answer this question for me. And it's not a trap question, but it's this.
When people say it's not a trap, you know it's a...
When I was involved with the Prime Minister before he was the Prime Minister, it was very, very clear to me that Gerald Butts was the intellectual architect of the Trudeau candidacy and hugely impactful on the approach to climate change in particular. And I thought of them as alter egos. I couldn't imagine the Prime Minister without Jerry. And now he's been without Jerry for several years. How did the government change when Jerry Butts left?
Okay, well, in full disclosure, I mean, Jerry's a friend. You know, I worried because he was the climate guy, right? Like, I needed a person who had my back, where I'd be like, okay, I know this is really hard. I know politically, like, I just need you to support me. And he would also push on climate. So specifically on climate, it was harder because he just he just really understood climate and really cared about it and was in a position to make a difference. And so when you had other departments, great Adam Radwanski article about some departments who don't wake up every day thinking about climate, he could blow through that. I'm not going to get into like the friendships and the politics of the politics. Like, look, I mean, obviously the Prime Minister and Katie Telford and Gerald Butts were a team. They told us that. They told Canadians that, and they came out. But look, no one's irreplaceable. And I feel like everything gets so much into personalities. And like, once again, it's about doing things. I mean, do things change? Yes, because people leave. Like, I've left. Like, people are like, you can't leave. If you cared about climate, you would stay there. I was like, what, till I'm 85? Like, no. And so I think that, I can't speak to how hard it was for the Prime Minister or, how it impacted, the Prime Minister, Katie, and all of that. I can't speak to that. I can just say from my perspective, it was a loss because I just cared about climate. And he enabled action on climate and he pushed for more action and he really got it. And that doesn't mean other people didn't get it. It's just that other people had other priorities, like they cared about other things. Now, the Prime Minister cares a lot about climate, but he's got a lot of things on his plate. So you actually need someone that, you can call up, and be like, okay, I need you to blow through NRCan. Like, I don't know what they're doing. Once again, like we stopped doing that. Or transport or, some other places. Finance, we need finance to be in. And he could do that. Look, and I do think I came to politics because I cared about policy. I was like a wonk. I was one of those people, and we all know like how ridiculous you are once you get into politics. I would go to the Liberal convention and I'd be like, I'm all about policy. And it's funny because I remember when I was first running, just to get the nomination, and people were like, I want to be on your policy team. And I think maybe it was Jerry or who knows, Prime Minister. Like the answer was, yeah, my policy is go knock on doors, go talk to people. But having said that, policy does matter. And so, those people who play that, he played a very particular role. But no one's irreplaceable. And, people have to evolve and, things change. That's the way. And there's only one Prime Minister, right? So ultimately the buck stops with the Prime Minister.
There you go. To my next question. I'm going to preface this by saying that I detect, and I'm not an insider, but I detect no pressure on the Prime Minister to leave in the Liberal Party whatsoever as leader of the party. I don't detect any pressure about that. But nonetheless, people are speculating about it because we're in a term in office, which if it went a full 4 years, would take him to 10 years. And generally, Prime Ministers resign at the 8 or 9 year mark to avoid losing that last election. So it's conceivable, although not predictable. It's conceivable. With that preamble, I would say you're on everybody's short list that I talked to about potential replacements. Is that something you would consider?
Look, I just care about climate change. So I'm out now to focus on climate change. And that's really my priority. Look, I guess in life, never say never. Like if I felt like if we didn't care about climate change, maybe I'd be like, okay, I'm putting in my hand. I'm just coming in. Canada needs to do things. Oil and gas transition. It's not how I know these are games that people play. What did Pierre Poilievre say? The parlor games of Rockcliffe. I was like, do you go to the parlors of Rockcliffe? Because no one talks like that. Maybe you're in the parlors of Rockcliffe. But if people do this with cabinet, people do this. I feel like it's so exhausting. Just do things to make a difference. I don't know that that's a super relevant question. I'm really focused on making a difference and impact. And I know that can sound like, oh, she's so fancy, or oh, she thinks she's. But I don't think that. I just actually, literally, am so worried about climate change. I think we can all have abstract discussions, and then we can just look at the science, and we're so far away. So, look, I just hope whoever. Obviously at a certain point, the Prime Minister's not going to be there. Maybe we're not going to be there because probably Liberals aren't going to get elected forever. That's just a reality. People get sick of us. They get sick of government. And so you could do the stat on how long a government lasts, not just a Prime Minister, although sometimes it's the same thing. But I think that I care about doing good things. That's why I got into politics. And that's why people didn't understand why I got out. I found it was so weird when people are like, if you really cared about climate, you would be in politics. I was like, okay, that's just the weirdest way. Inclusion doesn't know any borders. You're not irreplaceable. And it's not all about one person. And it was really hard for me because I didn't actually expect this thing. And so I will always look at how do you make a difference? And I will do it on my own terms though. I'm not people have all these ideas about what you should do or what you shouldn't do. Even right now, I have lots of people saying, you need to do this. I'm like, you know what I need to do is actually try to figure out how I can make a tiny difference on this massive issue, because I cannot look my kids in the eyes in 10 years and say, I had power, because I have power. I know it. You got to own your power. And I didn't do that. And so however that takes me, that's life. I certainly wish everyone well. I feel please, everyone stop. To the extent anyone's playing these games, we have a prime minister. Can we just get to work and get things done? Make Parliament not dysfunctional. Good luck. It's going to be very hard, and it's probably going to be totally dysfunctional. And I hated it, by the way. I hated Parliament. And it's a very sad thing to say because I care about democracy. But the level of discourse being shouted at all the time, I think for women in particular, and as I say, I don't wake up every day being a woman, but I am a woman. I didn't love it. I was I'm just trying to get things done. And the games that are played, I think we have to be a bit careful about that. But I wish everyone well. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to right now focus on climate, and I will support anyone in Canadian politics that does that. I also will support women and broader diversity of people running. And I will go after the haters. Yeah, because kind of don't care anymore. Don't care. I'm going to spend every minute of every day because I waste a lot of time. But I don't know. But you know what, David, I actually just feel really lucky I was in politics. And I don't feel sad because people say, do you feel sad? Do you miss the fact you don't have a driver or something random? Or they're I kind of miss I don't have someone to schedule me because I'm very disorganized on my schedule. I
would definitely miss a driver. I would definitely miss having a driver.
Well, I got a bike. To be honest, where am I going? I actually live in the Leafs. I mean, sure. If you're in politics, actually in a minister, you're flipping going everywhere. So that was important. But those aren't the reasons I got into politics. But it was really amazing. You can't, the highs and lows, obviously you can never recreate. But one thing I don't buy, and I don't think this is a helpful message that I did get from a lot of former politicians. They're your best day in politics is your best day, in anywhere. Probably you can get more done on some days, not every day. But I didn't do that with high school. I didn't say my best life was in high school. I always think there's more to do, and it's going to be awesome wherever I do it. And I'm going to try to make a difference. And I think internationally there's a role I can play. So I'm hoping that'll also be amazing. It won't be my best days. I'm 50. Geez, my best days are behind me. I don't know. I might as well get on the couch with my dog and pass out, which my dog is actually passed out, not barking. I'm thinking she needs to walk.
That happens at 60. That happens at 60, Isaac.
Not happening to me at 60, dude. I'm going to be swim all 5 Great Lakes for my 50th birthday. I don't know what I'm going to swim all. I'm going to swim Antarctica. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I don't know. Just have fun. I feel life also, politics isn't everything, by the way. For the people listening to this, I know that's a surprise. And I sound
unbelievable. You can't say that on this show. Of course it's everything.
I know. Well, and I'm still on Twitter. I was my tweets this morning demonstrated that I'm still a little bit politics is everything. But I don't know, family's everything, climate's everything, having some fun.
Yeah.
And the Canadians, are the Canadians everything, David? Kind of.
The Habs are a lot. They're not everything, but the Habs are a lot. Catherine, thank you. This was amazing. Thank you for being so generous with your time and with your candor. And if I could be just particular, you're the only person I feel I've talked to that has the sense of urgency and anxiety around the climate change fight that is obviously necessary. I mean, we're way behind.
We're way behind.
So, way behind.
Yeah.
So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you've done for the country. I appreciate it very much. And God, may our paths cross perhaps in the summer over a glass of wine on a dock somewhere. Would be really nice.
Oh, I probably know where that dock is, so maybe. But that sounds great. Thanks. It's great. And actually, to be honest, and on a more sober note, everyone's part of the climate fight. So if you are listening to this, think about how you can help, whether you help a politician or whether obviously you need to do things yourself. But we are all in. It's all us. It's not just people in poor countries. It's impacting all of us, and we can do it. We can do it. COVID said we can do it, but discipline is required. Anyway.
There you have it, Herle Burly-ites. Get active.
Get out.
Get active. Thank you to Catherine McKenna. Thank you all for listening or watching. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, TELUS, our sponsors, CN Rail and Aurea, and special thanks for obvious reasons to Cole Caulfield. See you next week. Bye.